Welcome Trinidad and Tobago to our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barito. Let's take a look at the headlines. The Attorney General reaffirms government's commitment to prosecuting crime as he says government is serious about crime and no one is above the law. A new radio station just for prisoners has been launched. And a national workplace policy on HIV and AIDS to enable affected HIV persons to continue to be productive in their place of employment. Thank you for joining us. The Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago reconvened to repeal the controversial Section 34 of the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Act 2011. That section imposes a 10-year statutory limit for cases. As a result, a judge must discharge an accused and record a verdict of not guilty if the trial of the accused has dragged on for 10 years or more.
Attorney General Anand Ramlogan, speaking during the debate at Tower D of the Waterfront Complex, reaffirms the government's commitment to prosecuting crime, as he says the government is serious about crime and no one is above the law. Attorney General Ramlogan insists that the decision to repeal the law is evidence that Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar and this government is prepared to listen to the concerns of the public and relevant experts. He says this decision also proves this government's dedication to prosecuting crime.
Parliament haven't passed the law. Parliament haven't passed the law. The law haven't been subjected to public scrutiny. Concerns were articulated. And this People's Partnership Administration, led by the Honorable Prime Minister, Madam Kamala Persad-Bissessar, has demonstrated time and again that it is prepared to listen. It is prepared to listen. When concerns were expressed and raised, the DPP spoke with me on the matter. And having listened to the concerns raised by the Honorable DPP, I then sought an immediate audience with the Honorable Prime Minister. Having briefed the Prime Minister on what had transpired and the concerns that were articulated, the Honorable Prime Minister at 7 a.m., immediately upon listening to those concerns raised by the DPP, as outlined both orally to myself and as contained in a letter, the Prime Minister immediately at 7 a.m. decided that Parliament must be convened and we will come to repeal that provision. We come now to repeal this because we listen. The concerns expressed by the DPP and others, those concerns have fallen on fertile soil, Madam Deputy Speaker. And we as a government, we are prepared, consistent with the oath we took when we assumed public office to serve the people. We are prepared to act in the public interest and we will repeal this provision.
Mr. Ramlogan also refutes claims of a political conspiracy in the passage of the law and denies it was created to benefit any specific individuals. He suggests it was a simple matter of the entire Parliament not recognizing the possibility of accused criminals abusing a law meant to provide a better justice system.
I am not going to say that the Parliament acted in bad faith. I am a member of the Parliament and I will not say that. There was this idea of a political conspiracy between the opposition, the government and the independent senators, all of whom voted for this. I think it's fanciful and inherently incredible and I reject it and dismiss it outright.
The Attorney General also explains the changes he intends to make to the Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings Act 2011 as he repeals Section 34. It is expected that the changes will allow for a more robust legal framework with less loopholes for criminals to escape punishment.
In addition to the repeal simpliciter, I have asked for 3 things to be done. 1, the repeal will be with retroactive effect. So the repeal of the provision will be retroactive. That's the first thing. To the date of passage of the legislation. The second thing, we will do is we will insert a clause to say that all pending applications made under that provision shall be permanently stayed. So that any outstanding application that was made under that law shall be permanently stayed. We don't want to leave this to chance. Thirdly, and it always helps to have a prime minister who has legal training and is an experienced senior counsel like the member for Siparia. Always. The Honourable Prime Minister has suggested, and I have agreed as Attorney General, that we will insert another amendment to say that notwithstanding any law to the contrary, no rights or expectations shall be deemed to have been created or come into effect as a result of the coming into force of Section 34 of the Principal Act.
Gregory McBurney, News 4.
In other news, a new radio station just for prisoners has been launched. Rise Maximum Radio broadcasts from behind the Golden Grove Maximum Wall Security Prisons and seeks to bring about a new way of reforming lives through uplifting on-air programs presented by former and current offenders themselves who work alongside officers at the prison. Justice Minister the Honorable Hubert Volney says the initiative brings forward modernized techniques in reforming offenders and gives them a sense of hope and life.
You are listening to Rise Maximum Radio. Welcome to Rise Maximum Radio.
The resonating sound of Rise Maximum Radio coming on air for the first time. It's the first radio station, one of its kind, to broadcast throughout the nation's prisons via the internet. From behind these walls, a new message of hope and peace will rise and bring about the change society is looking forward to through the reformation of lives. Brainchild of the prison radio station, radio personality Gart Sinclair, says the idea came from his own time served behind bars, where he saw the need to reach out to offenders and let them know life has not ended.
I tried to re-enlist in the regiment and they wouldn't have it. So once we cross that line, it's not easy to go back. So then what do? Do we lie down and play dead? Do we take the bull by the horns and climb the ladder again? Well, this is what I decided to do. I refused to play dead. 10 years ago, I came up with this idea to start a radio program so that I could warn Trinidad and Tobago about crack cocaine, an entity that entered Trinidad and Tobago somewhere in the early 70s. And it never let go of us. It's destroying us, destroying young people today, one by one.
The initiative takes fashion after a similar prisons radio setup in the UK and is possible here in TNT as a result of collaboration between the Ministry of Justice and the British High Commission. Visiting executive from Prison Radio Association UK, Phil Maguire, who provided training for officers and inmates alongside local media professionals, says such a program shows the power radio has in transforming lives.
When I was last here, days before I arrived, the Prime Minister declared a state of emergency and imposed a curfew in response to the rising wave of crime gripping this beautiful country. And crime is clearly still a problem. It's a problem that requires complicated solutions. But prison radio can play a very important part in the battle against crime. Rehabilitation is crucial. Equipping prisoners with the tools, the confidence, the education, the self-awareness they need to change their lives is of paramount importance, and prison radio can help with that in a very meaningful way.
Commissioner of Prisons Martin Martinez says the potential of curtailing offenders is immeasurable, as numerous lives stand to be touched by the inspirational on-air programs.
The importance of Rise Maximum Radio must be seen in the context of the mission of the prison service, which is to protect society and prevent crime by providing constructive regimes which address offending behavior and facilitate the reform and rehabilitation of inmates in a secure, safe, healthy, humane, and disciplined environment, so as to empower and prepare them for reintegration into society as useful, law-abiding citizens.
In launching the program, Justice Minister Herbert Volney says his ministry understood the challenges involved in trying to transform lives, something he commends the drivers of the initiative for pushing forward into reality.
We realize that more modernized approaches are needed to combat this contemporary predicament of perceived and at times real lawlessness in our society.
This is the brand new facility at the maximum security prisons, where airwaves transmitting words of hope and inspiration will not only boost morale, but transform lives. Kimberly Ramlogan, News 4.
News 4 continues after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In just a few weeks' time, each building in the borough of Point Fortin will receive its very own address information, which comes with the implementation of the S42 Addressing Standard. This new postal code and addressing system is now being put into operation in Trinidad and Tobago. City Post General Manager Robert Hernandez met with Local Government Minister Dr. the Honorable Surajratan Rambachan and members of the media, where he outlined the details of the new exciting initiative. Dr. Rambachan says this is a great leap forward in developing proper nation status.
We were able to go through all the borough, street by street, building by building, where we numbered every street in compliance with the S42 standard, where we found buildings that were not properly numbered, we renumbered them. Again, as I mentioned, the borough provided human resources and vehicles. Currently, TT Post is completing the address cards. What we do after we have completed the entire exercise, we complete an address card that is delivered to every location. Every house and business gets a card that says, this is your proper address, to include the postal code. So within the next 2 weeks, every location, every business and house in the borough of Point Fortin will receive a card in the mail with a proper address and postal code.
Citizens can soon look forward to greater efficiency in the delivery of their mails throughout the country. This is just one of the many benefits to be enjoyed as the Trinidad and Tobago's Postal Service, in collaboration with the Ministry of Local Government, implement the S42 Addressing Standard. The postal code system requires that all streets in the country be appropriately identified and named. Speaking at the implementation of the postal code and addressing system at the ministry's head office, Local Government Minister Dr. Suraj Rambachan says emergency access will be tremendously boosted with this new initiative.
As part of the implementation aspect of the S42 addressing standard in Trinidad and Tobago, will be having street signs and street names for all the streets and local roads in Trinidad and Tobago. This is extremely important, not just in terms of the receipt of mail and in our country, but also if we want to ensure that the ambulance service, for example, the police or other emergency vehicles, disaster units, need to access a place very quickly through a proper addressing system, they'll be able to do so in the shortest possible time.
TT Post's General Manager Robert Hernandez, who gave a brief presentation on the new S42 postal code and addressing system, highlighted the numerous inefficiencies in the current mailing system in this country. He says with the great demands placed on the postal service in Trinidad and Tobago, this new system will now be able to respond more efficiently.
Trinidad and Tobago is undergoing a rapid rate of development, as each one of you here would know. And there's an increasing demand for improved services from investors and stakeholders. There has also been increased activity and involvement in the global market. There's internet shopping. In TT Post, we have seen that, where the amount of packages coming into the country now from internet shopping is on the increase. And that will only increase more as we go forward. Trinidad and Tobago must therefore have an efficient system of accurately and quickly locating addresses, a gap which can be filled by a much needed postal code system and proper addressing.
He says the new initiative is in keeping with the thrust of the international standard of addressing. This initiative, he adds, will facilitate many other services in this country.
The S42 effectively discontinues, and that is with the implementation here in Trinidad and Tobago, it discontinues the use of mile markers in addressing, lamppost numbers, lot numbers, and addresses that promote the and we will implement now addresses that promote the use of civic house numbers. This project relates to TT Post drives to have all addresses in Trinidad and Tobago compliant with the S42 standard. This is a major and significant development that would take Trinidad and Tobago into a developed nation status within the postal sector.
Veena Bharath, News 4.
Work is critical for our dignity and quality of life, and the government of Trinidad and Tobago is committing to facilitate access to a decent workplace for all citizens. This comes in the form of a national workplace policy on HIV and AIDS, which provides a platform to enable affected HIV persons to continue to be productive in their place of employment.
The Ministry of Labour and Small and Micro Enterprise Development believes that decent work must be based on equality of opportunity and treatment for all women and men. Statistics reveal that in Trinidad and Tobago, the HIV and AIDS epidemic is concentrated in the 15 to 49 age group, in which 71.0% of new infections occur, affecting adults, families, and communities. The ministry believes that HIV and AIDS are workplace issues, and action taken by the workplace can prevent new HIV infections of the virus. It is against this background that the National Workplace Policy on HIV and AIDS for Trinidad and Tobago was developed.
On the specific issue of combating the stigma attached to HIV and AIDS in the workplace, I take special pride in noting the several efforts of government ministries. Today, the Ministry of Labour and Small and Micro Enterprise Development, through the efforts of HASC, will mark yet another milestone in the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the HIV and AIDS Workplace Advocacy Sustainability Centre HASC and 16 key stakeholders.
Ms. Cheryl Haynes says the National Workplace Policy on HIV and AIDS is not only a significant deliverable of the project, but also exemplifies widespread consolations in the contributions of government, employers, and workers' organizations.
Its current mandate is to ensure that the principles of Trinidad and Tobago's National Workplace Policy on HIV and AIDS is implemented in all workplaces in this country. As part of its recent advocacy activities, the HASC has engaged a group of entities spanning the manufacturing, advertising, energy, and tourism sectors, and will be assisting these organizations to develop HIV workplace policies and programs through a series of workshops and technical support. Associations from the informal sector have also been engaged.
The National Workplace Policy on HIV and AIDS provides the framework for an effective workplace response to HIV and AIDS in Trinidad and Tobago. This will allow such persons living with the virus to continue to be productive in their places of employment.
The signing of the Memorandum of Understanding with the HASC signals the agreement to actively engage in the process of policy development and training related to addressing HIV and AIDS in the workplace and achieving the common goal of ensuring a decent work environment for all. This year, we celebrate our 50th year of independence. This positive response to dealing with HIV and AIDS in the workplace is an indication of our maturity as a nation. Today, we have strengthened our resolve to battle not just the scourge of HIV and AIDS, but also the indifference, discrimination, inhumanity, and misinformation associated with HIV and AIDS.
The ministry is calling on workplaces to deliberate on their response to HIV and AIDS epidemic and to develop their own workplace policy.
Our continued partnership in the fight against HIV and AIDS will reinforce and strengthen our institutional capacity to tackle HIV and AIDS in the workplace. Today's event signals the start of a program of workshops and technical support provided by HASC, supported by funding from the Ministry of Labour, Small and Micro Enterprise Development and the Ministry of Health and other participating companies. This workshop will not only provide training on issues related to HIV and AIDS, but will also set up a network with an HIV focal point person and an HIV committee in each participating workplace.
The policy contributes to ongoing national efforts to decrease the spread of HIV and AIDS and to mitigate their impact. It does so by setting standards of managing HIV in the workplace and promoting structures and programs to reduce discrimination. Joseph Lopez, News 4.
News 4 continues after the break. Stay with us. In sport, news of an emerging trend in international cricket as the West Indies Cricket Board and Sri Lanka Cricket have decided to scrap 2 tests from Sri Lanka's tour of the West Indies in May 2013 and instead plan to play a tri-series of one-day internationals, with India being the 3rd team in the mix. The decision will allow players from both teams to remain available during the Indian Premier League, which runs from April 3rd to May 26th next year. The teams were scheduled to play 2 tests, 3 ODIs and 2 2020s as per the Future Tours program. It is unclear if the 2020s will remain part of the tour. Sri Lanka Cricket Chief Executive Ajit Jayasekara denied the motive for foregoing the tests was to avoid a clash with the IPL, but failed to provide an alternate reason. He said the WICB had put forward the idea and they had agreed to change in schedule. Jayasekara said scheduling an ODI series instead of following the Future Tours program would end up being, quote, more lucrative for the board, end quote. WICB Corporate Communications Manager Imran Khan said that all 3 boards had agreed in principle to the tri-series. Dates and details would be finalized following final sanctions from the Indian Cricket Board. This will not be the first time a test series which clashes with the IPL would be foregone, and players have also opted for the lucrative tournament ahead of the Future Tour schedule. West Indies spin bowler Sunil Narine also missed 2 tests against England due to his IPL commitments, though he did play in the 3rd test. Chris Gayle did not feature in that series due to a standoff with the board, which has since been resolved. The change in the tour program is also a continuation of the SLC's recent trend of culling tests from Sri Lanka, as that should be scheduled. 2 tests against India in July became 5 one-day internationals, and the 2020 and the 3 tests scheduled for England in March became a 2-test series as the IPL approached. The Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard presented a naval exercise in counter-terrorism in the water at the Coast Guard port in Chaguaramas. This comes as the Coast Guard also held its 50th anniversary commissioning ceremony.
With the rains pounding on them, it would take discipline and skills to stay focused. And despite the inclement weather, the guards in crisp white uniforms held a street parade for visitors. Representative of the Ministry of National Security and Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, Ms. Jennifer Bucco-Blake, received a fitting salute. Then it was time for the Coast Guard to put on their show. The visitors enjoyed every moment of the march past.
A steam pass of some of the vessels for the squadron fleet of the Trinidad and the Tobago Coast Guard.
Those in attendance got to experience the water action in recognition of the Coast Guard's 50th anniversary. The Coast Guard is an arm of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. Established in 1962 after Trinidad and Tobago's independence from England, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force is one of the largest military forces in the English-speaking Caribbean. It consists of the regiment, the Coast Guard, the Air Guard, and the Defense Force Reserves. Its mission statement is to defend the sovereign good of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, contribute to the development of the national community, and support the state in the fulfillment of its national and international objectives. Joseph Lopez, News 4.
Well, that's how we wrap up this edition of our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barreto. Thank you so much for joining us.